Reset Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Operation Self Reset. I am Jacob Naraki, and you are here to transform, change, and reset your own personal life because you need it. You want to. There's no more self-help. Self-help is out of the window. That was so 1990. We're well into the 2000s, and it's all about resetting your life. No need to help yourself. You've been trying that for years. It's time to change it up, shake it up, and see what happens. So that's why we're doing a little personal reset. That's what it's all about. So, as you know, I've been trying to incorporate jokes into these podcasts. And I'm not really a jokester. I mean, I'm more of a sarcastic kind of joking guy. I can pop a lot of, one-line comments and stuff, but I'm not a good setup guy when it comes to a good quality joke. But I do, and I've read that when you hear jokes, you pay attention a little more, you're a little more enthused, your brain releases endorphins. So I'm trying to start each and every podcast with probably the funniest jokes you've ever heard in your life. And I'm laughing because it's sarcastic. The jokes aren't really funny, but they're jokes that you could take to your children or to your coworkers and not get in trouble. So let's dive into the joke for today. It goes as this. Why did the belt get arrested? I don't know. He held up a pair of pants. Awesome stuff. I know, hilarious. I'm a jokester. That's what I do. Maybe I should just have a comedy hour podcast where I just rattle off all of these funny jokes and laugh, sporadically in the background. So I don't know. But regardless, today we have on David Relf. He has probably the best, most interesting, most energetic, and enthusiastic, and one of the coolest guys I personally know in the podcasting world. The Updots podcast. I was currently on his show a couple of months back, and I'm repaying the favor because David is such a cool guy, and I think you're really going to jive with him. You're really going to enjoy his personality and enjoy the stories that he has listened to and interviewed from the great people that have come on his own personal podcast. David, like myself, enjoys interviews because it's a great way to get a different perspective on life, and as you know, we are here to transform and reset our life, but David also has gone through his own little period of a self-reset, and that is why I had to get him back on here. Well, not back on here because this is the first time on here, but I'm sure it won't be the last time, that's for sure. So I'm going to stop saying sure, and we're going to dive into the podcast with David Relf from the Updots podcast. Check him out. All the show notes will be provided at operationselfreset.com, and you can go there, check out David's podcast and all the fun links that we talk about, and enjoy the interview with David Relf. Today we have on David Relf. He is a half an hour out of London, out in the UK, and him and I connected way back in April. He actually invited me on as one of his own guests in his own podcasting show that was recently #1 in all of iTunes. That is right. We're talking the creme de la creme of iTunes podcasting host, David Relf. David, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate you coming on.
Jacob, it's an absolute pleasure to be here again. And I do want to cut to the chase. The only reason I came on your show was to hear you sing Bon Jovi again, which you did on my show.
Yeah, if you guys can go back into David Relf's podcast, I'll have all the show notes provided on the website. What number was I? Did you look that up?
71. I've now found it.
Okay, 71, and I had a little solo singing Bon Jovi, Living on the Edge. I don't want to give you too much detail, so if you're interested in hearing me sing, you got to go over there and check it out. So amazing interview, great host, great questions. And David, honestly, you are a professional when it comes to the mic. But before we talk about the podcasting career and how you're awesome, let's dive into you a little bit. How did you get into this space? Give us a little background on your upbringing and why did you end up where you are today?
It came together very, very quickly. It was a road that pretty much was about 25 years leading to it. But when the chance to become a podcaster came, I grasped it with both hands. But how it actually worked out was I was a trainer and I was used to standing up doing presentations and courses. So I've always been a speaker and I've always been somebody who's very interested in other people and connecting. So I had those kind of skills. But I then had a boss who joined a company that I was working for and was my direct line manager. And in the nicest way, she was a complete cow and I did not see eye to eye with her. She was a dreadful lady. And I just got to the point, Jacob, when I thought to myself, how can I let somebody dictate my happiness? Why can I let one person make me unhappy when they're there, and when they're not, I'm all right? So I just said to my wife and my kids, this is the end. I'm quitting. Oh, what are you going to do? You can't quit, And to be honest, I didn't really know what I could do other than build websites. So I thought, right, that's what I'm going to do. Safety net. I'm going to build websites for local companies. And after 3 days of doing that, I was so bored actually doing it and working from home. I just turned on a podcast one day, and it led me onto another podcast. And by the time I listened to 3 in the afternoon, bang, I was hooked. And it was like the first one. I thought, this is interesting. I've never really listened to these before. And I'd listened to like podcasts like Ricky Gervais and comedy ones, but this was like a business one.
Sure.
And I thought, I didn't even know these existed. And it led me to a second one. And by the time the third one came along, I was thinking, I could do this. I could really do this. I could see myself doing it. And I did. And it was just that. So it wasn't any sort of major story.
Right.
It was just that I was very unhappy in a position, and I wanted to be happy. And I found something in the middle that has made me happy.
Well, good. I mean, first of all, congratulations. Quitting anything is a heartache. That's a very tough mental game that you went through. Let's dive into that a little bit. Walking away from a job, you had a wife at the time. You still have a wife currently. You
as long as I know.
Right. She didn't leave.
Much of me.
Yeah, I didn't hear the door slam, so you're all right. And then obviously you have a son. Walking away. What did your wife say? Was she, well, good? Hopefully you can go out there and find what you love and what makes you happy. Or was she like, whoa, what are you doing?
Well, it's a bit more than that. I've got 4 sons.
Wow.
4 daughters.
Okay.
I've got a son. I've got a wife. I've got a grandson. I've got that package.
Yeah, you do.
And so to walk away from that, I was mentally ready, and I didn't even have a conversation with her really to say this is what I'm going to do. I just said it's time for me to try my own thing. And my wife she's not very entrepreneurial,
Sure,
but she supports me. Which is the kind of thing that I think many people find, that their partner doesn't really understand why you want to leave a salary every month to try to do something yourself, but they know you. And she supported me, and my kids have supported me, and now it's going really well. It's quite easy to say what I'm doing, and they go, well, what are you doing today, Dad? And I go, I'm doing a few interviews. Okay, see you later. And that was it. But in the early days, it was a mindset for them as much as for me. I actually had to convince myself that I could do this, and they had to convince themselves that it was worth their dad doing it. And it's all come together, so it is a proper job. And when I meet people now, in the early days, they say, oh, what are you doing? And I'd go, oh, well, I'm doing a bit of web developing and I'm doing this. And then I went into, I'm a podcaster, and I used to see blank glazes in their faces. They had no idea. So now I say to them, I'm a chat show host. And they go, really?
Oh, sure.
And then the conversation sort of goes off in whatever direction I want.
Yeah.
So it's been good for my ego, really, Jacob. And I've been very lucky that I found a thing that I can do naturally well.
Oh, for sure. And you said there a little bit ago that you said you had to kind of talk yourself into it. I guess what was holding you back? Did you feel you wouldn't understand the technology? Was it you didn't feel comfortable with your voice or asking the right questions or even setting it up? I guess what was the thing that you kind of had to pump yourself up for?
I think if I look back on it now, all those things that you say about asking the right questions, the voice, all that kind of stuff, never came into the equation.
Oh, okay.
I just kind of knew that part of me was set.
Sure.
My thing was the competition. When you get into anything, you will, first of all, think that there's only about 6 people doing it. And then once you start delving in and researching, you'll suddenly realize, hang on, there's a hell of a lot of people out there doing it. And I think I was quite bloody-minded, and I was in it for the long game. But I was also very lucky that I only listened to a few people, so I could convince myself that I was actually only against 5 or 6 people, and not the, what is it, something like 10,000, 100,000
Oh, yeah,
shows
sure.
out
If
there?
not more now, right, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot. So that's what I did. I just basically convinced myself that I could do it. I got the mindset on that I was going to be good at doing it, and I had the mindset that this was going to be the long game. It could take me a year, it could take me 2 years, 3 years, whatever. But I could practice and I would get better at doing it. And I reckon by the time I got to episode 30, that was when I was starting to feel really confident. And then 80 was another change. And now I've done about 270. And it's not something that I ever relax, because I like the fact that I'm always on edge when I press record.
Sure.
Because I don't have a single question written down. It's just a blank piece of paper. And I press record and my mouth starts going. And I go for an hour and 10 every day, whatever. And that is exhilarating for me. And at the end of it, when I sort of press the finish of the recording, I think, wow, I've stepped up a gear. And then the next time I had that same feeling of nerves and that. So I'm on my edge, but I like that feeling of being on the edge.
Yeah.
Living on the edge, as you say.
Now it's your time. Sing a little solo. Maybe
You're not going to get me to do that.
Maybe we could just have a solo podcast sometime. You know what? No intro, no outro. We just, slowly start singing, and then we kind of finish it off strong, But hey, we'll talk about that off mic. But what you just said, though, really was empowering, I guess, because obviously this is Operation Self-Reset. We're trying to change the person we are by shaking up a couple of things in our own life. And the number one thing people have the issue with is getting over that mental barrier of the questions, just like you said, all those, I don't know if, it's going to be tough and all that stuff. But the way that you went about it, and you identified that you will get there. It's going to take time, and it's going to take dedication. But you'll reach it. You're going to stumble at first. You're going to get your legs under you. Where did that mindset come from? Is that something you always just had a positive mindset from when you're younger? Is it a book you read? Was it somebody you met that just gave you that juice to live life a little more dedicated to your craft and to who you are?
Yeah, I do think that I'm a naturally positive person anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I always believe that things are going to turn out well. So if I go into something, I've really got to be ripped out of the chair by other people going, it's not working, stop. Because I can always go, oh no, I just have to try this and then that work. Oh,
right.
Just try that and then that work. So I think I was very lucky on that. On the other side of it, I think it's just in you. You're either a fighter or you're not. You're either bloody minded or you're not. And if you've got that ability to hustle and work harder than you've ever done before and do it without getting paid, which is a key thing, because when you start anything, you're not going to get any money out of it.
Right.
You just got to do it. I didn't care. And it was hundreds of episodes in before I made a penny on it. But I didn't care at all. I just loved doing the show. And I think that's a key factor that the listeners need to get into their head. When you start anything, don't think that within 3 or 4 months you are going to be living on a beach with a laptop, pressing a few buttons. This could be 3 or 4, 5, 6 years. And my whole path from the moment that I first started doing online work and trying to build in passive income streams to when I went live was about 6 years. And I tried numerous different things leading up to that. So it was trial and error. But I had a passion to achieve something. And that thing that I wanted to achieve was simply happiness. I wanted to feel inspired. I want to wake up every morning going, God, what am I doing today? Yes, I'm speaking to Jacob. That's going to be brilliant. And it's like that every single day. I have some down days when it's just administration and I'm ploughing through emails and things like that, which I don't really like doing. But the majority of my time, I couldn't want anything more.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of us, obviously living here in America, I know you're from the UK, we want money for our time. So if anytime you're going to go into a new job, a new position, you always think to yourself, well, I better be getting paid the most I can before you even step foot in that job. And like you said, it might take 3 to 5 years for you to even get a penny in your pocket. But as long as you're happy, you will reach there. And I think there's a lot of, again, power in that, because sometimes we don't understand the education that we're learning along the way. You have no professional background in radio show, right? I mean, you don't have any background in hosting a radio or anything like that, radio show?
No, not at all. I had an interest in radio. I had an interest in interviews, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I've said this on a few shows, but I think the great belief that people have to really get into their head is you don't have to know anything. You just have to have a passion and then research it.
Exactly.
And I think that's the key thing. If you've got an idea to do something and you go, oh, I don't know how to do this, then everybody else is the same. And you can go onto YouTube and you can type in how to, and you can find stuff. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I've just revamped my website today. And the first website, I just threw it up there to have a place to host the shows.
Right.
And it stayed there for 250 shows until one of my guests said to me, did you design that website yourself? And I went, yeah. And he went, bit rubbish, isn't it? And I kind of looked at it and I thought, yeah, it is a bit rubbish, actually. It was kind of imperfect action. And so I've revamped it, and I'm sure that's going to change again. So you can just go with it, and you can change direction, and you can progress.
Yeah.
And nobody's expecting you to hit a home run straight away. And I don't think anybody should hit a home run straight away. You develop your talent. You swing, and you get better at it.
Right. Well, the famous quote, I forget who says it, but you don't have to be great to start. You have to start to become great. And you hit it, again, the nail on the head, David. You're knocking it out of the park. It's so true. These simple things that we learn, I guess, even when we're younger, when we grow up, we think they're kind of thrown out the door. And the things that are easy are also easy not to do. And like you said, you just learn the things that are necessary. Myself, too. You and I are cut from the same cloth. I had no idea I knew podcasting. I didn't know how to set it up. I didn't know what equipment I needed. How do I get guests? How do I contact people? How do I edit? All that stuff. And it's trial and error. And if you listen to my first podcast or your first podcast, literally we sound like amateurs. And by no means are we professionals, because every single interview and time we get on the mic, we're gaining experience, we're gaining confidence, we're understanding how to communicate a little more better or clearer. And it's just stuff like that. So I really do appreciate you diving into that background, especially when it came to your own personal mindset of getting through something that is unknown to a lot of people, but personally you found passion in and you're happy doing. So again, congrats to you for living your personal dream. Let's talk about the show. You're on 270 plus podcast episodes. What is Updots all about?
Well, you've been on Join Up Dots. It's a journey. It's themed around a speech that Steve Jobs did back in 2005. And I'm not a great lover of Steve Jobs, and I don't own any Apple stuff either.
What?
I've eaten a few apples, and that's about as far as it's gone. But yeah, I don't own anything like that. And I was at work one day, and a chap came up to me, and he said, I've just been to the dentist. He said, I found this speech in a magazine. One of these ladies' magazines that you sort of pick up in dentists, and you wouldn't read them anywhere else.
Right.
And he said, have a listen to this. And he gave me this speech, and I read it. And then I went on YouTube, and I found the audio version of it. And there was something in it. And it was the middle part. And Steve Jobs basically says that you cannot see your path. It's only when you look back and you connect the dots. And you've got to have faith. You've got to have trust in yourself. And I liked that. I like the simplicity of it, but also the fact that he's saying, look, guys, you just got to do it. You don't know it's going to work, but if you don't do it, then it's never going to work. And so when I started doing the show, I wish I could come back with an answer and say, yes, I remember sitting there and thinking about this speech. I didn't. It just kind of fell into place somehow. And that's what I went with. And I called it Join Up Dots because of that. So we talk to people on a daily basis about how they got there. And it's somebody said to me the other day, a guest, and I love this. He said, your show is like crowdsourcing encouragement. And I thought, that's great. And that's the kind of thing I want. I want people to listen to it and they go, if he did it, if David Ralph did it, if Jacob did it, why can't I do it? And that's what we do. And we talk every day, and we have some amazing guests. We have entrepreneurial guests. We have Guinness Book of Record holders. We have world first lady to get to the top of Everest. We've had I try to vary it that every day you don't know what you're going to get. And the audience figures seem to be evidencing that that's what they want.
Yeah.
And that is what Join Up Dots is all about.
Yeah, I love the variety, and I've obviously listened to your podcast, and you bring on some unbelievable people. I don't even know how the heck you find these individuals, but nonetheless, obviously, you're almost like a fan. You're just guiding this person through the interview, and along the way, you're loving their stories. You love where they've been and where they're going, the things they completed, all that stuff. On the top of your mind, is there one or two interviews that really, to this day, that either A, keep you really inspired, or B, if somebody walked up to you on the street and said, hey, what's your favorite or best podcast episode or person you interviewed? Besides me, of course, number 71. Who would be second? who would be...
I would say 82 is a gentleman called Eric James.
Okay.
And I say to everyone, it's not my greatest show, but the chap tells a story at the end, and I just let him go with it. And it was so inspiring how he managed to achieve something. You realise that everything is possible. And so if anyone says to me, I don't want to listen to 250 shows, which one would you recommend? I always say, go with that one just for the bit at the end, because that's amazing. But I think one of the most inspiring ones was recently, it was 197, and it was a guy called Ousmane Ndoye. And he was a gentleman who was born in Senegal and in a fishing village, and got to a point as a teenager that he was almost suicidal, and decided he was going to take control of his life and get the American dream, and walked across the Sahara Desert on his own, passing dead bodies and whatever. And he spent 10 years managing to get to America. And when he got to America, America didn't want to know him. But he went again, and the challenge and the challenge and the challenge. And when he was telling me his story, I was literally in tears. I was sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, I've got to think of a question now." And it was like George was dropping.
Sure.
And that was really, really inspiring. But I've got quite a few of those kind of stories now, because when you start something, you get the kind of people that most shows have, because you've got to start. You're filling up 7 days a week. But now I get people like there was a famous serial killer in England in the 70s, and his first victim was a lady who went out one night, and I interviewed the son, who was 5, who suddenly found that the mum was never going to come home.
Oh my gosh.
And really sort of deep, meaningful discussions.
Wow.
But I think 82 and 197 are the two that jump out. But now you could pick most of them, and there's something in it that I'm extremely proud of.
Well, and the great thing is, every single person you've had on, I've had on, all the other podcasts, out there and on the in the web world, or whatever you want to call it, everybody has a story. The people listening, you have gone through something in your own personal life that maybe you don't feel is that big of a deal, but that problem or situation that you push through could inspire so many people. And I think that's the great thing that you are doing. Obviously, the people you bring on are unbelievable. Some are professional, some are amateur, and all in between. But it's the stories that every single person has gone through in their own life to come out of into something better, or they have a better sense of gratitude, or they feel that they're a little more at peace, and somebody that's listening to it on the other end while they're walking their dog, driving the car, can get that and go, wow, like you said earlier, I can do that. I can kind of change my mindset a little bit and shift to enjoy the life that I have. And instead of always looking at the bad, I can start to see maybe a little glimmer of hope every single day, as opposed to the negative. So that's really powerful. I guess, out of all your guests, what is the people that have achieved so much, and it doesn't have to be success or money, fame, fortune, anything like that. What's a reoccurring theme that you kind of keep on thinking to yourself, like, yeah, that person has that gift, or that person has that right mindset? What is it? And if you could share with our fans.
I know damn well what it is, actually. And this is something that I stumbled across. And the tagline of my show is connecting our past to build our future.
Right.
And the number one thing that every single person seems to have is the fact that they have tapped into the passions that they had as a child, and they've developed a career around.
No way.
So if you were somebody who, liked nature, then more often than not, the successful people are doing something in that field. If you're doing something that is like drawing or entrepreneurial, then that is what you should be doing. And it pretty much ties up to that. If you want to find the thing in your life that you love doing more than anything, look back to when you were about 7 to 11, and you would come home from school every day and you would do stuff just because you loved doing it. And it's like, I used to love drawing. And I still love drawing. If the kids come along and say, "Oh, could you draw a picture or whatever?" I will do that. But I had to go and clear out my mum and dad's loft. And they said to me, you know, when you sort of live at home with your mum and dad, there comes a time when you move out, obviously.
Right.
But if you're like me, there were certain things that I couldn't be bothered to take with me. So I left round there. And they said, "Come on, David, you've got to clear this out. You've got to clear this out." So I went back up into the loft, and there was a load of cassette tapes, which you don't see anymore now. But when I was about 9 years old, I'd forgotten this totally, but I used to take a little tape recorder and go round, and I don't know how I even managed to arrange this, but I used to go round to the baker and the butcher and the bank maker, sort of bank manager, and interview
Come
them.
on.
And I look at it now, and then there was another bag of tapes, and it was me and my friend doing our own interview shows. And he would do silly voices, and I would do silly voices. And so I look at it now, what I'm doing now, and it's exactly what I was doing when I was 9 years old, but I'd totally forgotten it. And I'd obviously had a hustle to build connections when I was a 9-year-old, which, you know, I've got now again.
Oh,
so
for sure.
it is. That's the thing. I think if you need to find your thing in life, look back. Look back.
Wow. That is awesome. And especially pulling in your own personal story there about how you were younger, running around interviewing people. And look at you now. Man, that is crazy. I'm trying to scrape my brain right now and think. When I was 9 years, so 9, well, in America, that's like third grade when you're 9. So I'm trying to think, but I'll have to think off mic because I can't do two things at once, obviously. But that's really, really interesting. And I think people listening might say, well, of course, that's obvious. You know, if you loved it as a kid, you'll probably love it as an adult. But we obviously disconnect ourselves from when we were children. We stop having fun.
We do. We forget. We forget.
Right.
We look for the money.
Yeah.
And we look for a career, and we look for a job that people will be proud of us. And so if you come out, you know, university, and you say to your mum and dad, and there's a certain point in your life where you're adults, but you still kind of get pushed around by your parents a bit, and you say to them, "Oh, what I want to do, I want to be a podcaster and interview people." Your mum and dad would probably go, "No, that's not a proper job,"
Right.
because that's where the sort of generations linked. And so I did years and years of that, doing work that kind of was a training course to where I am now, but just wasn't me, because I thought it was the right thing to do. It was a career that was expected of me. And the money, when I got paid the most money, funnily enough, was when I was the most unhappy, because I was really going against who my core person is, my core essence is.
Yeah, you know, and it's so true. You and I spoke a little bit about the financial situation with podcasting, but it's funny, people that are not in the space, they always ask, well, how much money are you making off of it? You know, they want to know it. You know, they want to know that money issue right away before even saying, "Oh, how, you know, who is the most interesting person that you talk about or you spoke to," and everything like that. It was, well, are you getting paid for this? You know, how are you making money? And obviously, you and I mean, we got into the space because we knew in the future great things would come out of it, but we never started because we said, well, I'm going to be the first-time millionaire podcasting host, and I'm going to travel the world and live in, you know, Guam and hang out on the islands and party like a millionaire. No, we did it for the love of getting to know people, that connection, all that stuff. And I think when you can take the money aspect out of it, the great things will happen. And a quick little story on my end, I was actually sitting down with a banker. I was changing over some funds and everything like that. And she had a couple of kids that just graduated college. I said, "Oh, what are they getting into?" And she goes, "Well, one of my sons is really good at math." And I told him he should be an actuary. Actuaries make, you know, $110,000 a year or whatever it is. And he goes to me, "Mom, I don't want to be an actuary because that doesn't make me happy." And the mom was sitting across from me, and she rolls her eyes like, "Can you believe that? He would walk away from $110,000 to do something that he wants to find what happy is? The money will give him happiness." And I'm like, see, that's the old school mentality. So I see a shift in our country, and obviously you see it in Europe too, worldwide, that a lot of it, the traditional jobs, the traditional mindset is starting to fade, and that's good, you know, and that's good to have an open mindset and to follow things that you love, because once you love something, you're not really working. It's something you enjoy day in and day out. So with that,
yeah, did you go the risky route? This is the question, isn't it? And if you went 20 years ago, the risky route was being entrepreneurial. Now the risky route is getting a job. And my
Right.
show isn't about being entrepreneurial.
Right.
Because there's so many
Right.
people out there
Right.
that would be rubbish as entrepreneurs. I just know.
Sure.
And the whole fabric of business would collapse if everybody was leaving their jobs. We need employees. But I do think you can be happy as an employee.
Yes.
And I do think that if you're in a job that you don't like, then it's your decision to find one that you do like. And it might be in the same company. It might be just reinventing yourself somehow in that job and thinking to yourself, right, okay, I've let myself go here. I've got bored. Why am I bored? Why did I used to like it? And just making a decision to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we need to aim.
Well, exactly. You know, like, for example, the person that's, you know, going over documents and changing the lingo, maybe at first she was the number cruncher and she loves numbers. You know, she loves jumping on the calculator and figuring out and problem solving and all that stuff. But then she, you know, kind of matured throughout the company, and now she's in charge of, you know, taking hold of these documents, and now she absolutely hates it. So like you said, you know, get back to your roots, find something that you love. And if you don't like anything that is in your current job, start going in your network and seeing what people are doing. Maybe there is a position in your current job that you never had experience with, or you didn't even know existed, and that could be an option for you. And you hit it on the head. Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. We don't need every person in America to start a podcast and live their dream. But you got to find things that you personally find enjoyable, and whatever it is to you, just go with it. You know, work it out. So very, very true. Great insight. I guess let's shift it into the family aspect a little bit. Obviously now you're kind of settled in as a podcaster. You're doing good. Your wife obviously does not have the entrepreneur back or mindset. Is she? Obviously she's supportive of you. How is that relationship going? Is she still, you know, slapping you on the back saying good for you, or is she kind of like, you're spending too much time podcasting, more time needs to be spent with me? You know, how's that line?
She can't keep her hands off me, Jacob.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. No, how's it going? No, she doesn't pat me on the back. She gets worried that I'm putting too much pressure on myself. But
Sure.
It isn't a pressure that is, how can you say? Well, when you're in a company, when you're working for somebody, you have pressures because they're telling you what to do. And when you are doing this, you have pressures because you want to do it as well as you possibly can. And you want to achieve higher audience figures. You want to build something. You want to push it. And it's that hybrid of a kind of hobby, and you're playing and you're working at the same time. So there was a time when I was doing really about 20 hours a day on this. But now I've streamlined a lot of it, and I still do it all on my own. And a lot of people say, how the hell do you do that? But when you get good at something, you can do things very, very quickly. So I can edit, record, upload, and book my guests and all that kind of stuff in a very short period of time. So that's not the issue. The issue is when you want to go to the next level. You can create a show reasonably easily, but when it becomes a business, then and you're reaching out to sponsors and you're doing coaching
Sure.
and you're doing all that kind of stuff, you need to balance it out, because at the end of the day, most of us have gone this route, or I certainly have, to be able to spend more time with the family. And if you're doing the opposite and you're actually working harder on this than you were as an employee because you love it so much, but you're not seeing the family, then something's got to give. So I now structure mine that I don't do any podcasting work on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I do it on a Thursday and a Friday and a Sunday evening. So I run a 7-day-a-week show all day on a Thursday, Friday morning. It used to be Friday evenings, but now I quite like to go out for a pint every now and
Sure.
again. So I've stopped that. And I find a Sunday evening is a great time, because quite a lot of people like to record shows on a Sunday evening, as we're doing now.
Right.
Because it's kind of dead time for me personally. So I have the whole day, and I go, right, 6 o'clock in the evening, I'll record maybe 3 shows. So I really only have to do 4 on a Thursday, 3 on a Sunday, and I've knocked it out for the week.
Yeah, that's really cool. You got a great system in place. Obviously, thank you very much for that insight with your wife. The only reason I ask is obviously I have a wife too, and you know, by no means is she coming down on me and saying, you know, you spend too much time here or there. It's just a good inside look on the way that your relationship is going. You know, as you said, when you start changing up your schedule and switching jobs, it can put pressure on the family in different ways, and it sounds like you guys got it figured out. Let's change it into your children. I have a 1.5-year-old. You might have heard him screaming in the background earlier because my office is upstairs and we have a second one on the way, and I'm just starting to finish up the office in the basement, which is like soundproof, and it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. But how is it, sharing, what you do with your kids and also letting them know that you quit a previous job to embark on something that you personally love? Are you putting the pressure on them to not get a traditional job, or are you just kind of letting them see the options and letting them make their own decisions?
That's a very good question, and it's something that I think about a lot because my older kids, they are in careers and they're doing very well for themselves, but they're kind of me 10, 15 years ago. They've gone into careers, they've got the stresses, they've got all that kind of vibe. And my two younger ones, I want them to know that you can actually be happy and have a career. You can find something that you love doing and try to build income around it. And I think they're getting a little bit more entrepreneurial, the two younger ones. My son, I think he would like to be the new Top Gear presenter when the BBC looks for new presenters. He would be right into that, and he loves his cars. And I'm saying to him, then look at something like that. Start recording your own little films about stuff, putting them on YouTube. It's all practice. Right. So he's kind of getting that vibe. And my younger daughter, who's 9, who leaps and does cartwheels, and she's always moving around. She drives you mad, to be honest, because she's so active. But I say to her, when you grow up, I don't think you should work in an office. You need to be moving. You need to be out and about. You can already see it. And so that's the vibe that I'm pushing into them. Not that I'm pushing them in any direction, of course, but I certainly would be quite aware that when I feel that they're going against their natural talents.
Right.
Don't just get a job. Don't just do it to make me happy or you happy or your girlfriend happy or whatever. Do something because it's going to make you happy. And I think then if you're happy, then most of the time everybody else is happy around you.
Yeah, very true. And obviously my kids are young, and one's not even born yet, so he's coming due in February, and it's not something that I really stretch or really kill myself over, but it's something that I think about. It's a fine line because obviously I had very good relationship with my parents, but of course as a teenager you always rebel. Your parents say, "Oh, you should be active. Find an active job." No, forget that. I want the career with the business suit every single day. You always want the opposite. You always think the grass is green on the other side. And sometimes it just takes that natural process to end up where you are. And some people need to go through the ups and downs and highs and lows to kind of finally level out and to realize, wow, I should have been doing this a long time ago, but now I'm in a better place because of it, because of all the heartaches and the headaches I've had earlier on. And it's just an interesting question. So I appreciate you answering that, especially when it comes to your own children and stuff like that. So very good, David. I have a last question for you that I wrap up with all my guests.
Not finishing already, Jacob, is it?
David, my man. I know you talk for like an hour and a half for days on end. I'm trying a new format, and I have to scale them back a tad. I do apologize. I would
do a director's cut. Do the extra extended 3-hour version.
As you know, it's Sunday here in America, and we have football, American Football Sunday, and my Green Bay Packers.
That's not a proper game. That's not a proper game. You can turn that off, Jacob.
No, I'm kidding. David, no. Seriously, you are a gentleman and a scholar. You are a man that has great energy. Let's talk about that for a second. How do you keep the peppiness? Obviously, sitting down, recording after recording, at the end of the day, you must be drained. What do you do, to keep yourself energized? Is it food, exercise? You just have a good mindset? Do you read a little motivational quotes before you sit down with somebody? How do you get that peppiness in your voice?
Well, it's certainly not food, and it's certainly not exercise. I'm renowned for not eating properly, and I don't do any exercise at all, basically. Putting my socks on in the morning is about as much exercise as I get. But I am naturally peppy person, and the energy level, I've been used to doing stand-up training courses for 8 hours a day for maybe 15, 20 years.
Sure.
So I'm used to doing that and keeping that energy up. And so when I'm sitting here, I can do maybe, I've done 12 interviews, nearly 17 hours back to back one day. And that was a killer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm never going to do that again. But when I listen to them, you can't tell. You can't tell at all, because I think naturally, if you're listening and you're talking to somebody who is trying their hardest to be inspirational, God, you got to be inspirational back, haven't you?
Oh gosh,
you can't be going,
yeah.
Oh, Jacob, I think I've heard that 20 times today.
Right.
You know, so you've got to be up and personable. And if you love it, again, I keep on coming back to that. I literally don't like going to bed anymore because I feel like I'm wasting time. And I've never had that. I used to love sort of going to bed and not getting up the next morning, but now at maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was talking to somebody the other day. You know, you were saying earlier, what is the common trait of people who's successful people?
Yeah.
They get up early. I found this theme, and now I've started asking people, you know, and I thought I'd hit the limit where this lady in Canada, I think she's going to be tomorrow's show when we release tomorrow, she said, I get up at 4 o'clock every morning. Now, getting up 4 o'clock in the Caribbean is probably all right, but getting at 4 o'clock in Canada, it must be pitch black, freezing cold.
Right.
That must be hard. And then I was speaking to a lady the other day who's got the most amazing name, and I'm going to tell you what this name is, and I'm going to have to read it. Right, this is Princess Umar Hatia Ibrahim Muhammad. Right. I've been practicing.
Wow, good job.
She is attempting to travel to every single country on Earth.
Wow.
And she's got 6 kids, and she does it while they're at school. Wow. And they get put with a nanny, and away she goes. And I said to her, how do you do all this, you know? And she said, I get up early. And I went, well, what time do you get up? 2 o'clock.
Come on.
Every morning.
Come on. What,
2 o'clock.
What time is she going to bed, though? What time is she going to bed?
That's mentally insane. What time is she going to bed? She goes to bed early enough, earlier than my 9-year-old. She goes to bed about sort of like 8 o'clock.
Okay.
But she says, I get so much done before the world starts. And she's kind of worked out that her body clock is suited for that.
Yeah.
And when you talk to people like Pat Flynn, you know, this sort of smart passive income guy, he starts at work at 10 o'clock and works through till 2. And so if you find that thing that works for you, then that is your time zone. But successful people seem to like to get up early.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. There's a gentleman named Hal Elrod, and he has a book called The Miracle Morning. And it basically...
Yeah, I've had him.
Oh, did you interview him?
Yeah, I've had him.
Oh, you have?
He got hit by a car.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, he died for like 8 minutes or whatever. Yeah, and so I read the book. I actually brought him on this podcast also. Him and I spoke, and I've been trying to get up at 4:30. I've been more around the 5 o'clock hour, but I personally find it beneficial. You know, waking up early. I've always been an early person, never that early, but I've always pepped up right away, never needed coffee or anything like that to get myself stimulated. But I hear what you're saying. Every single person has their own clock or creative time. And the thing is, you just got to know know yourself, know your body, know the way you act, and you can optimize your day or optimize the amount of time you put towards this or that to make things work. And the one thing a lot of people say, I get emails all the time, is, Jake, you know, oh my gosh, by the time you get home from work and eat and, you know, change and get everything ready for the next day, you know, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, well, what else are you doing that evening? Well, you know, I gotta sit and relax and all that stuff. And I'm like, you know what, cut that out. Cut out the TV, go to bed early so you can wake up an hour before work instead of running around like a crazy person when your alarm goes off because you hit it 10 times, you know, the snooze button, and now you're late. You know, try to incorporate that into your day, into your week, and I find benefits in it. Every single person listening to this has a different idea behind it, a different theory. It's up to you. All you can do is try some of the things David and I and all the other guests that him and I have brought on, and try to put it into your own life to see what works, you know, because that's what it's about.
Every single person on Earth, and this is going to rock you to your core, but every single person on Earth has 24 hours.
What?
And the most successful people seem to do magic within those 24 hours, and other people, exactly as you say, by the time I get home and I put the kids to bed, I open a bottle of wine and we sit there and watch 3 episodes of 24 or something, and then that's it.
Right.
And you've got to make the most of it. You've got to make the most of that time. So I was fortunate. I'm an early riser anyway, but now it's a lot easier getting up because you want to get up.
Right. Well, especially when you're dedicated towards your own personal craft. So, David, my man, amazing insight into your brain, the way you operate, the way you function. And I got to ask you, last question here. What does a self-reset mean to you?
Making a personal choice, I would say. Making the choice that it's down to you. I reset my button when I suddenly realised, and it took me years to realise this, and it's a very simple thought. I've only got one life, and it's up to me to make that life. And once I made that decision and pressed my reset button, everything has gone fast forward. I think beforehand, it was always me kind of waiting until something fell in my lap. But as soon as you press reset and you go, right, what can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? Who can I speak to? Who can I contact? Then things start moving forward in a positive way.
David Rell from the Up Dots podcast. How can people check you out, get in touch with you, all that fun jazz?
Well, you can go over to, you can type in Join Up Dots on Google and we come up number one, which is always very nice. Facebook, everywhere that you would expect to see Join Up Dots, except for Twitter. Join Up Dot on Twitter, which just kind of winds me up. Somebody's got my S. I don't know if you can then get the S back. But if anybody has found that S anywhere, please send it to me because I'd like to be Join Up Dots on that one. But yeah, any of the social media platforms, send it through to me, and I'd lovely conversations we're having.
For sure. And if you guys are listening to this and you ever thought about starting your own podcast, David is the man to check out. He has the system in place, the things to get you to that next level. He's been doing it 270 plus episodes straight. And the guy's only doing it 3 days a week, as you heard in the episode here. So check him out. David, honestly, man, you are an enthusiastic powerhouse of information. And the cool thing is, you probably have learned so much to implement in your own personal life that we could probably be talking for the next 10 or 15 episodes, hours on end, about stories and adventures and things that these individuals that you had on your own podcast probably affected your life in some way. So if the people listening want that same feel, they want that same mindset shift, you got to listen to David's podcast. I'll put all the links in the show notes and everything like that. David, my man, you're awesome, dude. I appreciate you sitting down with me, chatting with me for a little bit, and I know this will not be the last time we speak.
It's been a pleasure, Jacob. Thank you so much.
Thanks again to David Rell for coming on the Operation Self Reset podcast. Like I said, if you love David, you love his voice, his accent from Britain or outside of London, wherever he is exactly, go check him out. Truly great interviews, awesome people. And the one thing that I was thinking of when I was re-listening to that episode, you know what? He interviews some pretty outstanding, crazy individuals that are just doing what they love. He interviews mountain climbers that just absolutely get the rush of a lifetime to climb mountains, and it's not these people are getting paid and like that's their job. They just do it because they love it. And the suggestion I have for you is to love something in your life and just to do it. Go out there and create your own experiences. Create stories. Reflect back on your life when you're an old man or old woman and go, wow, I did that? That's awesome. It's easy to sit around and just enjoy the weekend, to prepare for the week ahead. Go out there and do something different. Do something exciting. Do something so outrageous that people will be knocking on your door or calling you or emailing you and asking you to be in books, in the newspaper, and to get on awesome podcasts like mine and David's. But regardless, just go out there and live your life to the fullest. Sometimes we get caught up in wanting to relax and catch up with work or catch up on things, projects around the house. Do what you love. And if that means getting a little adventurous or stepping outside of your means, go for it. Try it. Do something new. It's worth sharing and talking about, and you can pass it on to the next generation, either your kids or whoever. So go out there and live life. That's all I want to say. Again, thank you so much for listening to the Operation Self Reset podcast. Without you, I'd be in my basement talking on the microphone with my dog in the room. And actually, yep, my dog is still here. He's sleeping. His name is Yogi Bear. He's a Bernese Mountain Dog. He's like 120 pounds. He's a behemoth. And right now he smells like pure garbage because it's been raining and sleeting and he's been rolling around outside in the grass. And if you have a dog during the wintertime, you know that you're not out there all the time picking up his doo-doo. And so I am on dog duty right after this podcast to wash him and clean him up because I think he's gotten a little too rambunctious outside, especially when it's been sleeting and then rolling around in things that I'd rather not discuss on this podcast episode. Yeah, so kind of a very personal message there. I don't know why I decided to share that, but regardless, that's the gloriness of owning your own podcast. you can kind of share whatever you want. So go out there, clean your dogs, and live your life. That's all I'm going to say to you. And also, too, if you would like to find out more ways to reset and change your own personal life, head on over to OperationSelfReset.com. Sign up for the email list, and I will deliver high-quality PDF files to help you change your life today. It's free. I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to over-email you. I just want to get in contact with you and keep in touch with you. Heaven forbid something happens with this podcast. It's a great way to give you updates or what's going on with me and just to keep in touch. So again, I appreciate every single one of you. Dominate your day. Win the day. Go out there and win the day. Do something extra cool this weekend. And if you did and chose to take me up on my offer, feel free to email me, jake@operationselfreset.com, and let me know. Maybe you went to a Chinese restaurant. You ate a live squid. I don't know. Do something crazy. Or you dunked your head in the fish tank and you tried to grab a fish with your teeth or your mouth. That your teeth are in your mouth. But whatever. That would be crazy. I mean, think of the coworkers that would be standing around your desk. You would be telling them of these war stories of you putting your head in the fish tank trying to grab a fish. Maybe they would think you're crazy and or drunk, but you know what? It's an experience. It's something to laugh about. And like I said in the beginning of this episode, laughter releases endorphins. It allows you to feel good. Go out there, live, laugh, and matter. So we'll catch you next week, Wednesday, for another episode of the Operation Self Reset podcast.